Hello and welcome to Referendum TV. Yes, we're back and we'll be about to change your name probably tomorrow. Today I'm joined by Gerda Stevenson on the couch here. Welcome, Gerda.
It's very nice to be here.
Let's just get your thoughts on the result.
Well, I am much more buoyant about it than I thought I would be. On the night I was a bit down, as you know, everybody who'd been campaigning for independence, I'm sure was. But
when did you find out? Did you stay up?
Oh yes. When the Western Isles result came in, I thought that's it. That's absolutely it. I think other people thought, when Clackmannan came in, they thought that even then, right at the beginning. But the truth is, I never thought we would get independence this time round in one fell swoop. I was briefly kind of lulled into thinking it might be possible when we got that opinion poll of 51.
From Rupert Murdoch,
yes.
51 versus 49%.
And there was talk within the SNP of, they used the word carnival quite a few times, this kind of party atmosphere suddenly, and I thought, whoa, this is so exciting, maybe we could, and I love a party. I can't just say carnival to me and I'm off, and that was the point at which I thought, right, I'm going to make my campaign video, which I did, Machu Picchu.
Yeah, we just watched it. Can you explain a wee bit about Machu Picchu? We'll come back to the other stuff, but
yeah,
because it's a lovely little
it's my love song from my album to Scotland, my love song to Scotland.
That's the album Night Touches Day.
That's right.
It's the third track. There you go. Big Gerda.
And my approach is, well, it's always, I think there's no point in being negative. I think positivity is always a good tack. It's much more beguiling and winning. And I was in kind of party mood and thinking, maybe we can make it. So let's make a video of this song because I thought it would be great to just show Scotland in its beauty, and I mentioned the banks there's a brief reference to the banks having crashed, in the song, and so interestingly enough, listening to Phylon 4 on Radio 4 just the other day, looks like there could be another one coming.
Another banking crash.
Yeah, well, there's a whole huge, massive fraud going on, and I'm quite interested in this idea of, staying with Westminster represents stability, I think that's a mirage. Anyway, I made this video. We went up, in one day, we went from Edinburgh to Glenafric to Kintail.
That is a long journey.
Yeah, we did.
And the weather was favourable because the video was beautiful.
It was amazing. The weather was fantastic. We stayed in the bunkhouse at Kintail.
Can I just say, you can check this video out on YouTube, Machu Picchu by Gerda Stevenson. It's really lovely scenery and they did a lovely song. And lovely sentiment. So.
And the feeling is, oh yes, we will do it, and that is what I believe, and that's what I've always believed.
So we switched back to the beginning. We said that you were more of a gradualist, really.
Yeah, and Alex Salmond himself has said he's a gradualist. He always has been, which is why the SNP wanted Devo Max on the ballot paper in the first place, but that was not allowed. And of course, the great irony is that in the last, at the 11th hour, the big guns came up from Westminster and offered it.
You mean the Three Amigos?
Yes.
And they made a vow which has no legal basis whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was just so incredibly blatant and transparent and,
So do you think the Scottish public were deceived then? There's a school of thought that they were deceived by the combined offices of the UK state and the press and the broadcasters. Do you believe that?
Well, to be honest, I think that nothing is as simple as that. I think the truth is always complex, and I think there are a whole lot of factors. I do think people were very, very scared in relation to the whole currency issue. I mean, I'm part of the National Collective, the group of artists, and I think for artists, insecurity is and risk taking is absolutely what we do. That's the nature of our you envision
something in the future and go creative.
Yeah, and you go for it. So in a sense, I would say we're not easily scared. So but I think that people genuinely were scared. Interestingly enough, as we know, it was actually the older generation, because in the under 55s it seems to be that the overwhelming majority.
According to the Ashcroft poll, the analysis of 2,000 people, it showed every category pro-yes, except plus 55. Whether, I mean, that's based on 2,000 people, so we don't know the degree of accuracy, but we can say that
generally, probably that's true.
People. Yeah, what's your view on that? Do you think?
Well, I think older people will probably be more conservative, although my parents, 82 and 86, voted yes. They're English, have lived in Scotland since their 20s and are, passionate yes voters. So obviously, this isn't, hard and fast.
Yeah.
But I can see that people will be worried about their pensions. Well, they can worry about their pensions now if given what I heard on File on 4 is true.
The social, one of the theories is the social media impact obviously affected those in a younger age group. Would you go along with that?
I think so. I think that social media is the whole means of communication for the younger generation, isn't it? So,
absolutely, which is why your YouTube video will become viral in some point in the future. Just coming to the age profile, because it strikes me there's an argument. There's a book by a guy called Dad's Heroes, Rogues and Lovers, which talks about hormonal profiles. And obviously the hormones in younger people there's more of them and they're more intense. So that could explain, and it drops off latterly as you get older. So it could also be a hormonal explanation in terms of.
Well, I don't know, because people were. Somebody said to me the other day, I think it was my son, said that actually that he'd read some kind of table that had broken down those groups of under 55s.
Right.
And that I think it was I might have got this wrong. 23 to 26 or 25 or
that
something.
That category beyond the teenagers, yes.
That little small window.
Yeah.
Were more prone to vote no.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is interesting, and I think that's possibly because they've started earning for the first time, maybe. I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
and so they're starting to.
As you say, it's a multidimensional aspect, and we're never going to get one answer, but it's a general sense. But you seem very buoyant and upbeat about it.
Well, I do, because also I'm married to a Gael who comes from the Free Church background, which I have to say, from my experience of that, I would say that form of fundamentalist Protestantism is something that runs through the psyche of the Scots, and that was another reason why I thought, we're awful canny, we're kind of don't like change, we're quite conservative with a small c. I mean, psychologically, if you can, And so I was kind of thinking, is this likely? I don't know, I really don't. But actually, I mean, since the referendum, it is astonishing what has happened. This, explosion in people signing up to the SNP and the Greens.
It's more than doubled now, hasn't it? It's about 61,000 is the last visual I had on it.
It's amazing. I think it's fantastic. So, and I did not foresee that. I don't know, did anybody foresee that? I think it's amazing.
Well, in one way to increase, and that's about £390,000 into the SNP's coffers.
Now the third biggest party in the UK.
Absolutely. Are you a member of the SNP?
I have just joined.
There you go. That's one of the 61, 62, 63, 64, depending on what day you watch this, it could be considerably more.
I've absolutely not been a party member of anything for a very long time. The only party I've been a member of was Labour. I used to campaign up and down Dalry Road in Edinburgh with Alistair Darling. I know him, and
there's a revelation for you.
But there you go. But I left the Labour Party when Tony Blair became leader, not Prime Minister. When he became leader, I just thought, that's it, the writing's on the wall, because to me it was clear that he was not Labour.
What was he?
I think he's a Tory.
Right.
I think quite simply, a Tory. A warmongering Tory.
What do you think of Alex's decision, in light of the referendum result, to stand down?
I think it's probably a really sharp move. I think that I like Alex Salmond very much, and I think he's so maligned.
So do I.
I think he is so publicly maligned. I think it's shocking.
Listen to Gerda.
I'm on the Scottish International Education Trust, which is a great organisation, and I've met Alex Salmond on that trust as a fellow trustee, and I've been party to discussion on applications, from. It's a fine organisation that gives awards to educational awards to people who want to pursue routes in education, people living in Scotland, and I've heard him speak so eloquently about literature. I remember once him talking about the Scots language of the author Nan Shepherd, a wonderful writer from the Northeast, and I didn't think anybody on the Trust would necessarily know her work. I love her novels and her writing, and I was just so thrilled to hear that. You know,
to take you up in that. What he's seeking to introduce in Butte House, I believe, I don't know if he's going to have scope to do that now because of the standing down, was an enlightenment room as well.
Yes.
Celebrating the best in the Scottish arts, really, and Scottish culture. So I agree, he's a great champion of that.
He is, and I remember him giving the lecture at Solmorostig, the Gaelic College, on Skye when the new building was opened.
Is that at the top?
And it's the very, very big new building that's got a huge tower, and he gave the most down in Slate in in Cheng in the south of the island,
right.
And he gave a magnificent lecture. I'm married to a Gael, and my son speaks. He went through Gaelic medium education, and it was a brilliant speech. He said everything that I and my husband would have wished for about the fundamental importance of Gaelic culture in the past, the present, and the future of Scotland. And I mean, my impression is that he's a cultured, thoughtful, very, very interesting man, and has great compassion. And I also am hugely supportive of his approach on Iraq.
Right.
You know, and.
So, in terms of him standing down, you see it as you say sharp.
Yes, I think it's a sharp move because I think Nicola Sturgeon is excellent. He's terrific, and I think it's good to have a sort of any movement that's on the rise, which clearly independence is, should have a spring in its step.
You would characterise it as independence rather than nationalism because of the increase in the SSP and the Greens and the SNP.
Yes, well, I think I would always actually have characterised the Scottish Nationalist Party as an independence movement, actually. Right. Because I don't buy this thing that, you know, people who say I don't believe in nationalism. It's not a nationalism, because I think that the independence as is embraced by the Scottish nationalists seems to me to be expressed with tolerance and an inclusionist approach in relation to immigration and cultures of the world. It's outward looking, which I don't feel Westminster is at the moment. I think with the rise of UKIP and the whole kind of, you know, tail end of the British Empire is a very inward looking.
It's funny you should say this because I read an article this morning by Alex Massey, Alan Massey's son, in The Spectator. He was invoking, I think it's the cycle of acceptance of death, which is the Kubler-Ross cycle. Denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance. You know, that 5 stage, the DABDA it's called. He was invoking that, more or less saying, get over it. You know, get over it, yes voters. You know, stop blaming people. I get no sense of that from you.
I'm not blaming anybody at all. I think that's ridiculous.
You just don't think we're ready for it at this stage?
No, I think we're becoming ready, and I think what Scotland has shown in the referendum is a remarkable maturity, and the world has been watching, and we've shown an amazing democratic process at work, of which I am so proud. I mean, look at the percentages of people who've come out. It's astonishing. And, you know, Labour criticised very heavily this idea of bringing 16-year-olds in to vote, said that was just a kind of ploy to get, you know, the yes votes up. Well,
It did that.
Yeah, but there is unanimity now across, as far as I can gather, across all the parties that this was a fantastic move.
Well, Ed Miliband in that extemporised speech, where he forgot about the economy.
Well, he forgot to mention the deficit, I know.
Suggested that the 16 and 17-year-olds should get the vote in the rest of the UK.
I mean, they slagged the SNP off like mad for that, but now they're all saying, what a completely brilliant idea, what a great success, it's proved that democracy, you know, blah, blah.
Exactly, and they're becoming the champions of the NHS down south, so there's an irony there.
So I think that Scotland has conducted itself very well in this, I mean, magnificently, I would say.
I've conducted a lot of interviews prior in the run-up to the referendum, and you reminded me most of, I like to call him the amazing Mr. Fox, which is Colin Fox, because Colin was quite happy with campaigning. In fact, he was so happy with it, he wanted at least 2 more years. He says he could keep going for 2 more years. And you certainly seem to fall into that camp. You're incredibly buoyant about it.
Yeah.
Was there no down? Was there no down in the past week for you?
Well, I think if I had absolutely thought we were going to win, I might. I mean, the fact that I wasn't convinced of that did not mean I didn't, try to contribute. And I mean, I leafleted. I was on the Women for Independence, surgery in Westlinton, which was a pretty wall-to-wall no place.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But I did my bit. I wrote, when National Collective said, this is the I'm voting yes because day, get stuff out. I wrote my article, I sent it out, I made my video. I mean, I really...
Were you one of the 1,200 artists that
yes.
had no coverage in the mainstream press?
Yes, I did. Yes, yeah. I signed the letter and all the rest of it. So I did contribute. But yeah, I just felt all along quite philosophical about it. And I didn't fall out with my no voting friends. I have many no voting friends, and I genuinely didn't. Why would you? I mean, I think everybody has a right to their opinion, and I had good debate actually with some of them. Some of them I just didn't bring up the subject at all because there's no point, you know. So my impression, from my point of view, in my experience, was that it was a tremendous event, and I could have gone on, for another 2 years. Will go on for another 2 years.
I want to introduce a book now, and hopefully as a segue, it'll make sense. Gerda produced a book of poems, If This Were Real, and the line is based on, what poem is it?
It's a poem actually about war. There's quite a lot of poetry in there about war, and it's about it's a poem called Homework for Evacuee Day that I wrote about my daughter and I doing her homework from school. Right.
Maybe we can come on to that a little bit later. The reason I'm introducing it now is because Gerda was in both the Czech and Slovak republics, is that right?
That's
reading your poetry?
I was indeed, in July.
And you... Václav Havel is a hero of yours.
Oh, a great playwright. I directed his play, The Memorandum,
right,
with Communicado Theatre Company. Fantastic, funny, absurd play.
Brilliant. Where was that?
We did that. We toured it around. It was in Edinburgh, and we toured it around Scotland. Yeah.
Fantastic. And one of the things you noticed was that, apart from anything else, they just agreed to separate.
Yes, it was astonishing because we were coming up to the referendum. This was the end of July. I was there. On and off trains, and by the way, no passports, no problem. When I ran out of euros in Czech Republic, they let me spend it because they're on the kroner.
Yeah.
And in many restaurants or shops, whatever, they'd say, yeah, okay, they'd accept the euros. I mean, all this scaremongering we've had about passports and borders, it's such nonsense, I mean, I went to Poland as well. It was Czech Republic, Slovakia and Poland. Never had to show my passport once.
I had a solicitor, a QC, Austin Mitchell, on who was noticing in North Edinburgh some Polish people were basically told, it is alleged, vote no, otherwise you will lose your right to stay here.
I know. My son works at a Rudolf Steiner Centre for Adults with Learning Difficulties, and there are quite a lot of Polish members of staff there, and one of them said, look, I might be deported tomorrow if I vote yes. I mean, where did they get that information from? It couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, it's interesting, that's for sure. We don't know enough to state with any degree of certainty, but it's certainly one of those additional plays on fear that seems to have been a major feature.
I mean, all the stuff about, the fear is ridiculous. I go to Ireland quite often, I go to do poetry readings and singing, and that's the Irish Republic, and we go via Belfast usually. There's, you can't even tell that you've hit the border. Yeah. It just isn't an issue. You don't have to show passports. You don't have to,
You seem really quite annoyed by this.
Well, I just think it's so small-minded, and it's this kind of little Britain. People who I don't understand. Presumably they haven't travelled. I can't believe they haven't travelled abroad. But I mean, it's just so silly.
It says a great deal for you, and it tends to the strength of your character. Living in one of the most no areas in Scotland, which is the borders. You could...
I love the borders.
Sure.
I don't love it because it's I love it because I love the landscape and I love the people. And
sure.
I was born and brought up there, and although I've lived in various places throughout my life, I've come back to settle there, and I love it. Robert Louis Stevenson land, the Pentland Hills, the hills of home.
Round the back, that's where the Icelandic ponies are.
That's right, yeah. Yes.
So, just coming forward a little bit, because there's another thing. This is just falling into place nicely. It's not as orchestrated as it seems. Another part of your recent corpus is a play by Gerda Stevenson from the Edinburgh Festival, Federer versus Murray. Now, this isn't, as you might think, pro-Murray. This is about Federer. Okay? But the question I'm going to ask Gerda is, when Andy Murray came out for Yes, though it was kind of subtly done, it wasn't as blatant as some have misreported it. What was your thoughts?
Well, I just thought he always has seemed to be an independence guy, hasn't he?
How would you?
I mean, because he got into trouble, didn't he, years back for, was it for, a flag or something? I can't remember, but they tried to tell him to sort of, it wasn't really appropriate. So
tone it down. I think it was something about British and Scottish. I think it was something
so.
like that.
So I've always thought he probably is a Yes, person.
I think in his hotel up in Stirlingshire, he's got the Stevenson room, the Wallace room, and so it's quite. So I think there's evidence there. So, but the reaction of some quarters of the press.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I haven't been closely following it. Shall I tell you? I've really since I was on Facebook quite a bit during the last few days. I'm actually a bit of a Facebook virgin. I've not really done much, social media in my life. But I thought, this is the tool. This is during the, the referendum. So I kind of got going. But then there was an awful lot of stuff afterwards about people feeling broken and grief-stricken. And I just thought, I just don't want to go there.
Yeah.
I'm just not going there because I don't actually feel that. And, so I've actually been taking a bit of a break. So I've been vaguely aware that Andy Murray's, there's been a bit of flack and all the rest of it. And I suppose it is problematic, isn't it, when you've played Wimbledon and at last won, and then you've been claimed by the Brits, I mean, this is a very interesting thing, and maybe now I would say something here that's a bit controversial, but...
Excellent.
I really do understand this thing of feeling British.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
Now, I have been castigated by folk for saying that.
Right.
That I've been told that that's a disgusting, disgraceful thing to feel. British.
Right.
I'm sorry. I actually do. I was born and brought up in the Scottish borders by English parents. I have a Lancashire background. My parents are from cotton mills, railways, Lancashire. And I trained at RADA in London, Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. I worked for years in Stoke-on-Trent at the Victoria Theatre, which I absolutely loved, an amazing theatre in the round. I work in London every now and again. I film sometimes in Yorkshire. I did that Heartbeat thing. I've done, I do have an experience. I love Radio 4,
Who doesn't?
Yeah, who doesn't? I love Radio 4.
I was speaking to Kevin Williamson yesterday, and we were talking about our favourite programme is In Our Time.
Oh, what a great programme.
Despite Melvin Bragg being part of the Love Bomb.
No, I love Sandy Talks Figs, the news quiz. I love the Now Show. I write a lot for both drama. I've written for BBC Radio Scotland drama. I've written a lot of drama for Radio 4. So
maybe square the circle for some people, because you're quite clearly sit at ease with that identity.
Definitely.
And yet we're absolutely determined to vote yes.
Yes.
So maybe you can say a wee bit more about that.
Well, I don't think I would necessarily cease to be British. And I don't think I would, lose my relatives over the border. I don't think... I think it's perfect. I've been working on my CD and that song Machu Picchu with a Norwegian, and he just simply could not understand why anybody, as a Norwegian, why anybody would vote no to independence. It just seemed kind of absurd to him. And he's very fond of the Danes. He feels Scandinavian. He's kind of, he feels part of that area.
Yeah.
And he just...
It's often determined by food.
Yeah.
Pickled herring being a big one, and
So, I kind of... I think that probably it took me... I wasn't as absolutely clear about voting yes. I always knew I would vote yes. But I wasn't as absolutely clear about it maybe a year ago. I didn't think I would vote no. But, I think it just takes time just to look into things. And
what was the convincer for you that switched you to yes?
I don't know. I think it was... well, it wasn't that I wasn't... I was a little trouble. I had this feeling every now and again I'd hear... the Now Show or something on Radio 4, like Sandy Talks Fig or Just a Minute or something, and I'd go, oh, I feel very British. I'd have that feeling. What does that mean? But it's fine.
It's interesting because my son is half English, and I remember some of the early stages when it was getting a bit the allegation that you were anti-English, and I'm thinking, well, how could I not love all of them? How would I separate it? What level would I hate that arm but like that arm? It just became ridiculous when you reduce it to that mundane level. I don't think it has any relevance, and it's great that you are an embodiment of that. That the reason you voted yes is nothing to do with ethnic identity or shared identity.
I think ethnic identity, that whole thing I think that's rubbish. And in fact, one of the reasons for voting yes, one of the many, is that I'm very perturbed about the what I perceive as a kind of creeping racism in Westminster. I think that there's I'm worried about, as I wrote in an article about why I was voting yes.
The difficulty is in researching for this programme, I have to say, is you are prolific. There is an abundance of material that you've actually written on. And the idea of somehow coming to terms with all that so that I could fully comment was just far too much. So do you forgive my ignorance when you quote stuff?
Oh, no, this was just a wee article I wrote. It was the thing of, I'm voting yes because, And I have a number of Polish friends, and one of my friends left. He went back to Poland last spring, and one of the reasons he gave, there were a number of reasons, but one of them was that he just did not like what was happening at Westminster. He didn't like the rise of UKIP. He was getting nervous, and I said, come on, Marek, stay, because we're having a referendum. You're a taxpayer. You work. You can vote. Join it. Yeah. But he just didn't like the look of things, which was interesting. It wasn't the only reason.
No, there'd be bigger ones.
There were many other reasons,
but it's a contributing one.
It was contributing, and I thought it was an interesting comment, and I thought it was worrying. And I do think it's worrying. I don't like the rise of UKIP, and I think that
because it skews the politics to the right, doesn't it?
Definitely, and I think that Ed Miliband's got a job in hand, hasn't he? He's trying to appeal to Middle England. He's trying to appeal to potential UKIP voters who are leaving Labour in the north of England. Yep. He's trying to appeal to the Scots who are hemorrhaging to the SNP. How is he doing? How is he going to do all that? I don't think he's going to.
You don't think he's going to? He's a wee bit adrift in the polls, but some polls come back and say he's 5 or 6 points in the lead. But if you combine the UKIP and Tory vote, he's dwarfed. So
I don't see it. I really don't.
And you travel down in England quite a lot.
Yeah, and it's interesting because actually over this campaign, I've got friends who weren't voting, who are English, who live in London, who hoped that we would stay with the union, who've changed their mind because of what they feel is going on at Westminster. They're just thinking, well, actually, Scotland, you've got a point. Why don't you go and do your own thing?
Yeah, people like Billy Bragg, and I think even Owen Jones was moving towards that from The Guardian.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fallout from this campaign. This is a tricky question because I know your love of things British like Radio 4, which I share.
Which we're not going to lose. We can still get it.
No, but the question I'm going to ask you is, in terms of, let me be specific, in terms of the BBC
bias.
News bias, that might help.
Yeah,
to extent.
I think there has been.
Right.
I do. That's. I think that I felt during the campaign that the only journalist who really I could have genuinely not guessed what the bias was Alan Little. I think he's a fantastic journalist, but I thought his coverage was very good, and I felt that he was balanced, but I thought there was a lot of stuff going on that was not balanced at all.
Do you think about the Nick Robinson incident?
Yes, I did. For example, and people just not being picked up on when they were peddling stuff that was blatantly not true. It's just I did feel it was biased. I did actually.
Yeah, I think that's right. What are your current projects, Gerda? What are you currently working on? And might this process and this result, or the actual day, might that produce some creative flurry from you? In terms of a play, a poem?
Well, I think it's an ongoing thing for me. I've got a poetry collection in mind that that's to do with Scottish women that I want to write. I've got and I've started sort of just tentatively sort of working that out. I've got a play that I want to write, which is about my experience of being a mother of a daughter with Down syndrome. And I've written a lot about my experience of speech and language therapy with my daughter. As a professional communicator, as an actor, writer, director, I get very excited by forms of communication. I recently did a play that had sign language as a major kind of intrinsic element of the story. I had a deaf character that I wrote and directed. And I've done a lot of sign language with my daughter when she was little as a bridge to speech. And I've written up about that on my website. And I've had a lot of communication in response to that from parents, mothers actually, exclusively mothers. And one, a Romanian woman who's an actor and daughter of, she has a little girl who has Down syndrome. And interestingly, there's a kind of symmetry because, as I say, she's an actor. Her daughter is 10 years younger than her son, who doesn't have Down syndrome, which is exactly the same as my family situation. Yeah. And the Romanian Parliament has been lobbied recently by family members who have their family members with disabilities, and because
we come on to after Ceausescu, the Romanian orphanages became big news, and there's places in there's Hospice of Hope for Romania. There's those kind of charities, because that seemed to be very low down the list of priorities, just in terms of general.
Well, I don't think they're anything like as far on as we are in relation to inclusion.
Yeah.
I mean, my friend Luana, she was told that. What was the point in educating your daughter? She's only fit for being in the yard like animals. Mm. Can you imagine?
Well, I can imagine your reaction to that and your friends.
And she also works in the oldest Jewish state theatre in the world. She's Jewish, and they work not in Hebrew, but they work in Yiddish, which is a dying language throughout the world. It's kind of really on its knees.
Oy vey.
Yeah, I know, oy vey. And I am very involved with Gaelic, obviously through my husband, who is from Skye, and my son's had Gaelic medium education when we lived in Edinburgh at Tollcross, and
which of course has now moved to Boddington.
Yeah, that's right to Boddington. So I'm very interested in minority languages, and I've just got an idea. As an artist, you get a kind of smell of something. You think, well, this is quite interesting. Communication, minority languages. There's a lot.
It's where your passion lies. Yes. Your daughter. There's a communication.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a minority thing. I want to, before we expand on that, I want to just come back to the idea of your role in Women for Indie.
Mm-hmm. Which was not huge, I have to say. I was not. I'm not a member of but I did join the women in West London at a surgery one Saturday.
It's been an interesting process because originally some of the thoughts around Alex were that he was too smug in terms of some of the feedback that was given. Obviously, you and I are fans, so we don't agree with that. But now that he's left the scene, or not quite, because I don't think he ever would. But now that
I hope not.
I hope not too. But now that he's stepping aside, do you see Nicola's role as being pivotal in bringing the women vote in?
I think it could be. I mean, she's generally a very popular politician, I gather. I mean, I haven't met anybody who's ever said. I haven't heard anybody ever say anything negative about Nicola Sturgeon. Have you?
Historically, yes, but not recently. In terms of her effectiveness running the NHS in Scotland, I think there are few people who would criticise that, because I think she did an exquisite job as far as that's possible in the complexities of the NHS. But it's an interesting development, because already in her speeches she's beginning to put some distance in terms of switching it to a different focus from maybe where Alex did.
Well, for a start off, she's been talking about referendum and not this sort of suggestion that a referendum might not be necessary.
Uh-huh.
I mean, she's been doing that, hasn't she?
Well, Jim Sillars, who was here last week, was saying that, you know, what we would do, because I asked if yes or if no, and if no, he said, well, what we would do is pursue a mandate elsewhere, so that would be either at the general election or through the Holyrood election.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's very interesting.
Yeah, go on.
I don't know what to think about that. I tend to think it's always better to have consulted everybody, actually. But then, of course, you can argue that you have done so if it's part of your manifesto and you've got this overwhelming, you know.
But it's a more upfront way, isn't it? I mean, you can be quite sleek in the manifesto.
I know. I think it's better, and that's why I quite liked what she said yesterday. I thought that was good. And, I mean, to go back to the Czech Republic and Slovakian situation, I mean, I was shocked when they said they didn't have a referendum. It was just decided by the politicians, and they said they were a bit kind of, whoa. But actually, in the end, it was fine, they said. And you went, oh, really? I was kind of amazed by that.
Do you long for the day that potentially one of the leaders in Scotland is a playwright?
Oh, I think that would be marvellous. You know, I think...
Well, step up, you've got the energy, you've got the insight.
No, not at all. I love the story of Václav Havel, or Václav, I'm never sure how to pronounce that.
I'll take your lead.
Apparently he, when people used to appear at his presidential palace or whatever it was, he sometimes used to arrive at the door on roller skates and roller skate back down the corridor. I love that, just that image.
I think Butte House would have to be converted for Nicola when she moves in there. Just coming on, so there's a whole cloudburst of interest that you have just now. And coming back to one of the reasons you might be yes, is it partly because of the provision for the likes of your daughter and that side of Scottish culture?
When you think of the bedroom tax, what's gone on there? I researched over 7 months and wrote a play for BBC Radio Scotland about homelessness. And, I mean, the bedroom tax is iniquitous, and how dare they call it spare room subsidy, and how that has affected disabled people. And I didn't meet a single person when I was...
Can you see how it's affected disabled people?
Well, because people often need an extra room. For equipment, for all kinds of reasons. And there've just been so many, and not just disabled people actually. So many people have been affected by this, and it is a complete non-starter.
Yeah.
I interviewed many homeless people and also many professionals from the City of Edinburgh Council, from social workers, from volunteers at organisations like the Rock Trust, Street Work, and all these different charities. I didn't meet one professional or one homeless person who thought the bedroom tax was anything other than a disaster, and iniquitous and unequal and unjust. It's crazy. We need to be in charge. We need to be in charge of our welfare.
Well, if we switch back to the bankers and then getting away with failing as bankers, really,
it's just astonishing.
It's an interesting contrast,
isn't it? It's absolutely shocking that we have. There are so many contradictions here in people's thinking that I think Westminster the Tory government has been very successful in, I think. And Labour has followed the scaremongering tactics. It seems to be a whole kind of approach, scaremongering, to hit, the poorest in our society and criticise them for, benefit fraud, when you'll always get benefit fraud of some kind, but it's going to be a tiny percentage.
It's
minuscule.
It does seem to be the Tories to look at the lower income groups in society, or
how
groups in society.
Dare they when what the bankers are doing is just and it's ongoing, so there's all of that. But also I do think that David Cameron, I mean, he had a disabled son, Ivan, who sadly died, who I think has had cerebral palsy, and I kind of thought naively that he might have had some kind of insight.
I think that's a bit harsh. I mean, we can't say that he didn't have insight.
But then why bring in something like, a bedroom tax that absolutely hits disabled people? I don't understand that.
I agree with you, but I think to a certain extent Ian Duncan Smith was responsible for a lot of those ideas and various policy wonks that pushed
So do you
it
think
through.
the Prime Minister has no input then?
I'm not sure, but I don't think we can make that leap that he had no insight from his experiences with Ida.
No, in relation to, I think that he spoke about his son beautifully and was very moving when he spoke about his son.
I think so too, yeah.
And I respect that. And I celebrate that he spoke about his son in that way, but I would have thought that would have translated into political terms, is what I'm saying.
Yes, that makes sense.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I'm not criticising him at that personal level. I'm saying that I think, and in all my writing and my work, I'm interested in the personal and the political and how they connect, and that's the point I'm making.
I see that, and that fires the passion.
Yes.
In terms of all you do, it seems.
That's the point I'm making.
Why the passion for Federer, though?
That plays is not really about Roger Federer, although I am passionate about Roger Federer, and I am not the least bit ashamed of saying so. I just think why would you be? I mean, he's a god. He is.
Well, but, obviously to you he is.
Yes. But the play is actually, it's about bereavement and grief. It's also about war on 3 different levels.
Right.
It's about the war of long-term marriage.
Right. Okay.
Of which I am a survivor.
For all newlyweds, don't be discouraged. She speaks the truth.
And also, it's about the gentlemanly or comradely battle of sport, on the tennis court.
Yep.
And it's about the war in Afghanistan.
How did you work the Afghanistan angle in that stage?
You have to read the play, but I mean, there's.
Well, as I say, there is a plethora of your work out there.
I know.
Give me a couple of years and I'll get there.
It's actually a tragic comedy.
Right.
I mean, I love it when comedy hits against tragedy, because I think that's true of life.
Yes.
And so you've got a couple, an older couple, and they have a son who's gone off to fight in Afghanistan, and he's a musician. So I had, it was a cast of 3, a saxophonist. I had the wonderful Konrad Wisniewski in the first production. And
Konrad Wisniewski?
Yes.
Where's he from?
He's a Polish extraction in Glasgow. His uncle is the wonderful artist Adrian Wisniewski.
Right.
Who's one of the Glasgow boys.
The reason I ask, my son's at school with a Wisniewski.
Oh, right, okay.
So I know a wee bit about the history of the arrival of that branch of Wisniewskis in Scotland.
Oh, right.
Post-war Poles.
Yeah, right. Well, Conrad's one of them. So he was in the first production at Oranmore in Glasgow.
Fantastic.
And so, yeah, the couple, they have this son. I mean, my own son, I remember, told me when he was at People's High School how the British Army came on a kind of recruiting thing to People's High School, and they brought a jazz band, and he said they're in the music department, and he said they were absolutely brilliant. And so I went onto the British Army website, and it was interesting. This was a few years ago, I don't know if it's the same now, but one of the first images you saw in the recruitment was a jazz band with a saxophonist, and I thought, that's interesting.
It's a sexy image.
Really? Oh yeah. And my son said that it was, it was very, very tempting the way it was presented. Anyway, so I thought that was a very interesting story.
I'm tracking this, but I've got to be like Hiawatha tracking this. It's pretty hard.
So I thought this was an interesting story, and then I had, and I heard on Woman's Hour, another of my favourite Radio 4 programmes, a couple speaking.
Mine too.
Yeah, it's not just a woman's programme.
Purvis.
I mean, it's fantastic. So it was about what happens when people retire, and how that can affect the dynamic within the household. And it was a whole series of fascinating interviews. And I thought, God, that's very interesting, isn't it? The idea that so a lot of things just came together, and I'm a complete tennis groupie. I just absolutely adore Wimbledon. Is my favourite.
She won a cup for her school once.
Very local.
Very, very local to the school.
Very local.
Nonetheless.
But I just watch nowadays. And so I've got some nice sort of. I've always found that McEnroe, I could never bear him, and I could not forgive him for what he did to Bjorn Borg, in that lot when he had his.
Be serious.
Oh, I'm serious. I am. You cannot be serious. You cannot be serious. I am so serious.
Don't kick any of the fixtures, please. Just leave them alone.
And so I've got a great McEnroe speech in the, a speech against McEnroe. I think he is a brilliant commentator.
He's fantastic, isn't he?
I love him as a commentator. Adore him. Fantastic. He's so funny and he's so brilliant. And he's forensic in his, in his analysis. I think he's great.
And the personalities, it's just not just the play, but the personality involved as well.
Fantastic. Yeah. But on the court, couldn't take him. No.
It's probably turned off now, John.
But yeah, I loved Borg, you see. I thought Borg was just when Borg finished, I just thought, well, that's it. I'll never have any reason to watch tennis again. And then Federer emerged.
Well, you left the 90s. You stayed until the early 80s and then left the 80s and 90s and then came back on.
I found it quite difficult to. There was nobody quite whose play grabs me. But I mean, Federer is like he's just like a dancer. He's just an artist.
Well, it's nice that you're enthused. I'm still trying to track the connection with the actual title of Federer versus Murray.
Because the play that the father in the play, whose son has gone off to war, and it emerges that the son has died. He can't come to terms with this loss, and so he kind of substitutes Roger Federer, who is the same age, born the same day,
right,
as he turns him into a substitute in his grief, and so there's a lot of comedy and a lot of tragedy in that, and the wife, the mother, she can't forgive her husband for having encouraged their son to go to war, although she supports the war. So you have a debate that goes on between two people.
So there's a
one supports,
tension,
the war in Afghanistan, and the other doesn't. And there's this
it sounds lovely and meaty.
Yeah,
Sounds there's a lot there.
And so there's a lot of political debate, but it's not a political play in that sense. It's not agitprop. I don't ever want to tell an audience what to think. It's much more interesting if you present an argument and then leave it to, and actually nobody's right in the play.
Yeah, if we bring that fast forward to the aftermath of the result, the independence result that happened a week today. Seems so long ago, the press of events. Two things. First of all, do you think we'll be at war by Monday with ISIL?
Well, in that article I was mentioning that I wrote, I said we will. I bet you anything. As soon as the referendum's over, the next thing will be Iraq and ISIL. That'll be the next thing, because they wouldn't dare bring that in the week of the referendum, because I do believe that Scots. I mean, I might be wrong here, but I don't think there's an appetite for going to war again in Iraq.
In Iraq,
Syria. I know it's not against. I know, but actually, the Iraqis. They're very divided on whether we should be in there. It's not simple.
It's not clear cut.
And I think it's high risk.
I wish I had read this article, but as I say,
it's not. It's just one thing I mentioned. It's not. I mean, everybody's been talking about it.
So we will be at war. And what about the vows that were made? What do you think of those, Gerda?
Well, I think the difficulty is that you've got these parties that can't agree, who are supposed to be in charge of delivering this vow.
You see,
so I think it's very problematic.
I spoke to a friend, a very wise friend, who reckons what Alex did is a masterstroke in many ways, because the issue now focuses down in Westminster. And there's a lot of steam building up towards the Labour MPs up here in terms of separate movements to oust them. But I think Cameron, the Prime Minister, to a certain extent, has played quite well too. Because who's left carrying the can is Gordon Brown and your former colleague, Alistair Darling.
I know. I think Labour is in... I mean, they've got this huge problem, haven't they? Because we've also got the issue of, the West Lothian question, which complicates things hugely and could emasculate Labour totally in Westminster.
Which was the announcement on Friday morning by David Cameron saying we need English votes for English MPs and Scottish votes for Scottish MPs.
Well, that's a big problem for Labour in Westminster, because they will have...
40.
I mean, how will they carry, if they did get in, how would they carry forward any legislation?
It would depend on the extent to which there was a big vote for them or not. But I think on normal numbers and what's likely to happen up here, I think the latest poll would show 26 SNP MPs given the 38% proposed voting for them. So potentially the masterstroke that Alex Salmond's played is that he would have a large bulk of MPs in a minority coalition situation in Westminster, where before you know it, there would be a move towards, I think the more intellectual term is secure autonomy. We probably know it better as home rule.
Yes.
So there's a lot of pressure there. There's a lot of things that might happen, which I suppose gives us cause for greater optimism.
Well, I think that's it. I think it's a completely fascinating, at the moment, constantly shifting picture. And I don't know for sure what's going to happen, but it looks like Labour's in trouble, which is, I mean, I don't want it to be good news that Labour's in trouble, in the sense that I was many moons ago a member of Labour, and I believe in the basic tenets of what I thought was the Labour Party.
Yeah, of socialism.
Of socialism.
Yeah.
But that seems to have ceased to be.
Yeah.
I think that the SNP is a way of getting independence and getting... I mean, I have to say, I've been in a quandary. I've been wondering, should I join the Scottish Greens or the SNP? But I think at the moment I feel it's strategic, so I've joined the SNP.
So Gerda's keeping it strategic.
So I just, and yeah, I'm not a great flag waver. I'm not a sort of, but I love Scotland. I think it's got a distinct culture. I think we've got. I think we are tolerant. I know there's been a lot of debate about, particularly Jim Murphy's been pushing this line. It's rubbish to suggest that Scotland is necessarily more has a more sense of communality than the English voting public. I mean, that's an interesting thing to debate.
Well, quite clearly, there's 45% of a massive electorate that voted and believe there is a profound enough difference to take it forward.
I think so. And I think that when I think of Scottish theatre, we've had a long history of political theatre in Scotland that starting with Sir David Lindsay's The Three Estates.
Yeah, which you recently were involved in.
I was in that at Linlithgow Palace over a year ago. I've been in that play several times, different versions of it. This was the first time we did the actual whole version, nearly 6 hours long.
Wow.
It was absolutely amazing, and the word the commonweal comes into that play. John the Commonweal is a character who is brought into the Parliament. He takes on the whole establishment. It's a very seminal, important play.
There's been a lot of work recently. I mean, the 3,000 Trees, the Gathering, well, not the Gathering Storm, what was the one?
The Pitiless Storm.
Yes,
Pitiless David Heyman. I went to see that at that play at the Blantyre Miners' Welfare. It was very interesting on the Saturday before the referendum. It was very interesting to go there because it was absolutely stowed out with ex-Labour voters.
Right.
There was a Q&A session afterwards, and that was another reason why I thought, because that was the Saturday before the Thursday when the referendum took place, and I thought, before I went to see that play, I was thinking, whoa, I think it's going to be a tough call. And I saw that, that audience made me think again. I thought, crikey, they were all previous, former Labour voters who were so fed up.
But once that door's open into the possibility of independence, it doesn't tend to be shut again. So I suppose that's hope for the future.
And you can watch that last speech, by the way, of that play on YouTube. If you Google The Pitiless Storm Last Speech.
The Pitiless Storm Last Speech by David Heyman.
But it's acted by David Heyman, but the play is by Chris Dolan, a very fine writer.
Chris Dolan, yeah. Okay.
So you can watch that. It's very interesting. It's had loads of hits. I mean, thousands and thousands.
It's about to get some more. Gerda Stevenson, unfortunately, we have to draw this to a close. I could carry on for at least another couple of hours quite readily.
I've enjoyed it very much.
Well,
too.
I'm happy. Gerda Stevenson, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. My pleasure.